Great. Well, thanks. Hopefully, I've been sipping on coffee here, so hopefully it gives me a little bit of jittery energy here, and you get some good information out of this. So, I'm Ryan Johnson. I run the product teams at CallRail, and Andrew mentioned, our core business started out with call tracking and analytics, attribution, of course, focused on calls, and we've broaden the platform through text messaging, forms, chat, and a bunch of those types of things. But in a previous life, I worked at a company that was funded with, while I was there, over 130 million of venture capital. After I left, another 120 million, and it was a AI ML company. And we were working on things like vision models, so being able to detect things in an image or in a video, and our whole platform or concept was based on anomaly detection and alerting based on a lot of different signals out there. So spent 3.5 years really deep in there. Definitely not as deep as David. I'm not writing models. I'm not touching code. And there's a lot of other smarter people doing that. I'm just trying to herd the cats into a product and get it out the door. So during my time there, I experienced a lot of it, right? And you go through varying levels of AI and ML and how people perceive it out there in the market. I kind of like to start with layman's, like the way I view it. A lot of things that I used to hear is, does it solve all my problems? Does it, can I automate X to X and never have to have a human, or lay off 100 people and the computers just take over? And in a lot of cases, the answer is no. It's there to improve processes. It's there to improve certain aspects of a journey. But in many, many cases, the technology is not there yet, or it's too cost prohibitive, or the timeline to get there is too long, and those types of things. So, we know that over 80% of marketers feel that having some form of AI or ML, in utilizing it in their, in campaign management and testing and those types of things is worthwhile, but it scares a lot of people. And so, get happy about it. I get happy about it. I love talking about it. It will help you. And I want to make sure that even the littlest thing, I mentioned it later on about kind of crawl, run, walk, can make a difference when implementing these types of technologies. On the other side, it wouldn't be a presentation without showing the Terminator if we're talking about AI and ML, right? Fun fact, when Skynet actually becomes self-aware is my birthday. So if that ever happened, hopefully I get a pass in that world, to be like, hey, we're celebrating things together. So please spare me. But okay. So a little bit of my philosophy on implementing ML, through my journey. One thing is I really like to work with best-in-class partners. So, people like David and his company, and people who have expertise in these certain areas. One of the partners that CallRail works with is called Assembly AI. They're our speech to text partner, and I want to make sure I'm using the term very strongly about partner. They're not a vendor. They're there with us. They depend on us. They depend on learning from us and how we utilize it. But they have the data scientists and data engineers and all the GPUs to run this complex machine learning in the cloud. And, a lot of times this can be very, very expensive to hire internally when that's not necessarily your core business. And really for me, it helps focus my team on what is the value that we're trying to provide to the customer from these data sources versus trying to recreate the tech. We do some things in-house with ML, but it is also powered by third parties that help us get over the hill of saying, okay, we want to create a brand new NLP model. We think it's going to be better than Amazon and Google and that type of stuff. It's like on a wheel, kind of trying to constantly keep up. So I feel there's a really great partnership, and a lot of those folks do feel like true partners because they depend on that data and feedback to improve their technology. And if you're giving them that feedback, whether it's automatically or manually, to help improve their models, like you're improving it for the rest of their business as well too. So I really feel it's a great relationship. And so, what I say is, focus on the value that you can create for your customers. In my previous life, we got so competitive about our vision model can go and beat Google and we can run all this stuff. And that's what we'd go out in the market and say. And then Google has billions and billions of dollars and, groups of data scientists that were 10x the size of the company we were. And a month later, it's like, okay, done. So we almost had to take a time out and say, okay, what things can we focus on that are good? And then really, what is that secret sauce of those different data sources? And then our own internal ML and AI and just basic engineering logic to provide the value to the customer. And so I get really excited about that. And then, really the crawl, walk, run onboarding. A lot of this can seem really complex and, from a setup perspective. And you can do things that are very discoverable. So I'm going to talk about speech to text a lot today and things like call highlights where ML can just kind of say, hey, by the way, people are talking about this. You should know about it. And starting there before you put in a bunch of complex rules in routing and such. So speech to text, transcribing recorded customer calls is the most basic use of form of ML in practice at CallRail. Pretty straightforward, right? As we have customers that get tens of thousands, if not hundreds of thousands of phone calls, it's just not scalable for humans to listen to them, actually transcribe them, put in notes, and rate them. Is this a lead? Is this a customer? Is there a value on it? And so it also makes it easier for the businesses, and marketers to have that additional qualitative and quantitative data for the conversations that are happening. So a little bit, how does it work? So behind the scenes, ASR uses machine learning to automatically transcribe audio content. It uses a very large neural network to convert audio to text. And to train it, you show it millions of audio files and transcripts to those audio files, and eventually it will learn and convert audio files to text on its own. Sounds really simple, right? It's not. A lot more complexity in there. And it's a never-ending battle. One of the pieces we get all the time, I'm sure Andrew's given us feedback as well, is like, hey, we get these transcripts, I don't understand it. It's gibberish. What were they talking about here? And so it's a battle. And one of those most recent ones is COVID. We have, customers in, that are dentists and quick care and hospitals, and they need to know when people call in and say the word COVID, and it was just coming out as gibberish. And so we had to make sure that those models could get updated and could actually recognize a word like COVID for those particular businesses. And it's going to happen again with whatever, double fingers crossed with the vaccine, right? So whatever the proper name or other name out there, people are going to want to understand, when do people say this in a phone call, or, when it comes to a form submission, or in a chat, or in a text. So let me keep going. Okay, so I'm going to talk about a handful of practical uses for digital marketers. I'm going to show some screenshots from CallRail. It's just a way for me to explain it. There are lots of different tools. You could probably do it in similar ways, but I felt it was the easiest way to convey my message of what you can get out of using these tools. So we'll talk about spotting key terms in a conversation. So, obviously you have to use speech to text for calls, but then also looking at forms, text, chats, emails. So saying, you know what, this word is really important to me when it's said in a conversation. Spotting trends at a glance. So what can these algorithms tell us that we would have otherwise not understood or known? So basically, what words are being spoken that we aren't tracking, that we didn't set up a rule around, that we need to understand. Ways to automatically categorize and qualify those leads without having a human look at it. Understanding, and this is a big one, rep performance. So, are they following a script? Are they setting, if the goal is for them to set an appointment that day, are they actually saying things like that day and that date versus, next week? And then finally, understanding marketing campaign performance and then optimizing content. I mean, one of the ways, and I would love to take credit for this, and this is how they were using it to say, you know what, we actually use this. And there's like all these words that like we don't have on our website from an SEO perspective, or we're not bidding on, or we weren't bidding enough on, but now we know, like, gosh, when people call in, they're saying these all the time. Like, this is a great tool just to optimize our content. And it was awesome that was just discoverable by the customers. So the first example here is spotting key terms and what I say using automation rules or actions. So basically on the left here, what is the interaction? So it's, setting up a rule to say if, the keyword deposit or don't have or deliver or Thermo King a specific product, take this action. So you can score it as a lead, you can score it as a not qualified lead, you can actually apply a value, or you can, display in different types of reporting. So I think this is like the most basic, you understand your business or you understand your customer's business to say, okay, they're, a landscaper or they're a consultant. Like, what are the words that are said that are important to them that you're going to want to bubble up to them when they're evaluating the performance of these leads and phone calls that are happening in the company. The second one, I love this because it's just so basic. And when we launched this, it really shocked me because I do feel it's super basic. So what you're looking at here is being able to spot trends with call highlights. So a part of the technology that we've implemented is the ability for the system to recognize words that are being said across conversations that we feel are important beyond what the customer actually set up. So in the blue, those are key terms that we actually set up. So this is actually looking at people calling into CallRail. And then the white bubbles are the ones where we didn't set up those terms. The system's letting us know, hey, people are talking about this. And then you can, filter and do all these things, based on a variety of things. Like, you can do it based on speaker. If the caller said this, agent said this, those types of things. But what's interesting here is when I pulled this up last night, I noticed that like one of the bubbles in the center is ticket, right? And so from a support system or a support perspective, I can tell you, you know what, people are calling in to follow up on a ticket, versus support, which was a word that we, wanted to set up as a term, but it looks like a lot of people are following up on a ticket. And so that's a conversation we want to have with the support team to say, hey, is there something going on? Is there more tickets that aren't closing as quickly as possible or something like that? Another one out here is, tracking with the ellipsis here. They're calling in to talk about how to set up their tracking, right? Sometimes things can be complex. They have issues. And so, for me, I love to use, let me go back. I love to use this in the crawling stage, right? Just get transcripts up and running, and let the system tell you the conversations that people are having, and be able to start to understand what's happening during conversations. And again, these can come from a phone call, they could come from a text string, they could come from a chat conversation, all the above. The next one is understanding rep performance. So again, this is another internal, CallRail example. Hopefully I'm not embarrassing the agent here, but what you see on the screen is, a waveform of the call that took place. And you can see the agent said these words: calendar, account, tracking, Zoom, invite. And those are the words that we wanted to spot. So that's a good thing, right? The agent's talking about setting an appointment on a calendar, a specific account, okay, we want to do a Zoom, is the invite out there? And then as you can see, as you can see, the Gosh, sorry, I'm trying to move the, there we go. Sorry about that. There we go. So, and as you can see here, some of the rules that the customer set up, which was us, was to automatically tag this as a qualified lead. So you can see here it was auto scored. This was, and then tagged as like a potential customer, and that a meeting was actually scheduled. So these were all auto tagged, based on what the person set up. The next example, let's see. Okay. So the next example, understanding marketing campaign performance. So this is a home services example. So, really looking at what types of words are said, not only from, in this case would be a plumber, right? No hot water, those types of things. And then kind of going through and saying, do they say Yelp? Did they say Angie's List and those types of things? And although we can triangulate, if they're coming to, the website or to your Google My Business or those types of things, and understand the destination they came from in many cases, it's also important just to understand, like, are people, what are they talking about when they're talking about Yelp? Are they saying it was a pain in the butt to find you there, or your Yelp, ratings were really bad, or they're really good, and that's why they called you. And so you're getting that, extra level of, intelligence from the data here. And then this one, I apologize because someone really went to the nth degree here. So this is an automotive example for optimizing content. So you can see here, the keywords that they care about are vast. Oil changes, stuck in gear, labor, transmission code, all these things that make sense for an automotive repair shop or even dealership for that matter. And so, what they're really looking for here is, with this and along with the call highlights, how are people talking about our business? Or, over the course of time, do we get a lot more people that are searching for things that have to do with, clutch repair, that we may not have dedicated content on our website to say we even do it, but we're getting phone calls and people are asking about it. And so there are lots of different things to say, okay, once you've set up these rules to say, these are the keywords that we want to track and help improve our content, you can really go to town, as you can see with these folks here. And then, my last piece before I stop rambling here is, what am I focused on in 2021? It's what I talked about earlier, like, how do I make that secret sauce for our customers better? What is the, I like to call it the automation rules. So what types of things can our customers do to customize it to their, for themselves and their customers? So, if in a very basic sense, a call was over 3 minutes and it said these 3 words, then it equals, this type of qualified lead or not a qualified lead. And then, helping with templates. I think there's a lot of things that we can do that we know as marketers, where, it is, sometimes difficult for people to, get this set up. So can we say, here's a template for automotive, or here's a template for home services? We realize this may not solve everything, but like start with something that, it has, the basics, and then learn from there. And then we're really looking at things like entity recognition. We do this today. So like for example, like PII and those types of things, removing, that information, but you can actually go on the flip side too. So as much as you can hide and remove that information, you can also point that information out to a person that says, oh, like a credit card was actually said in this conversation. That's definitely a customer, or definitely a value on that. Or they're talking about a person or a service or those types of things. And then getting into sentiment analysis, like we hear this a lot. We do a little bit today, but I really want to make it, what was the sentiment of the caller? What was the sentiment of the agent? And then what was the sentiment of the entire call? in really understanding, along with all those other data points, to build that secret sauce, right? To say, oh, call was 20 minutes, the sentiment was really bad. You can start to build some rules around that to say, hey, maybe all of our long calls are really bad and it's because of this. Or maybe all of our long conversations in chat are because of this. And then also topic and intent recognition, just really easy ways for people to understand, what was the intent? What was the topic that was talked about? So was this a service appointment or was this a new business appointment? Was this a warranty call or was this a new product, type of inquiry? And, so a lot of this, I feel I went really fast here because I get really excited, but I wanted to show kind of multiple examples of how you can use this. And again, using screenshots from CallRail, that's how we do it. But there are things out there that allow you to build these rules. And, for us, it's a constant, like every month improvement, right? We learn things from our customers. We understand that their needs are changing and the technology is changing, is getting better every single day. And so how do we, keep on, improving that, whether it's at the very basic level of a transcript or whether you kind of go up and get into some of the more advanced types of rules and ML AI technologies out there. So I'll stop there. Happy to take any questions, or y'all can take a drink from that rapid fire excitement, whatever you prefer.
Yeah, thanks, Ryan. I have a question here from Caroline that came in on Slack, so you probably didn't see it as you were reading there. But the question's about privacy and regulations, and you touched a little bit on PII and how you can obscure some of that information. But what do you think that means for marketers and technology providers like you guys going forward, when obviously things are only going to get more restrictive, probably not less restrictive? So how do you plan, maybe as an industry or even specifically as a company, to address that so that you can still make something useful and valuable out of the data? Sure.
So, certainly, we have a particular subset of customers that have to abide by these, hospital systems and medical practice, so PII. But you also just have companies in general that want to protect, if they're, in many cases, even though they're using these tools to help automatically score or transcribe, they still have a person looking at it, right? And instead of that person listening to a 20-minute phone call, they're looking at the transcript and all the metadata we are able to provide. And so, basically protecting other information, it really depends on the customer, right? Whether it's, the stuff that makes sense, like credit cards, or if it becomes like person details. And as we know in our marketplace as a whole, like that's evolving, right? With regulations, certainly outside of the United States have become very difficult, and certainly, things that are evolving here and in California and those types of things. And so, for us, it's to keep up on those rules and regulations and make sure that our tech is abiding by that, minimally, but then also just giving tools to the customers that may want to, protect the data a little bit more, based on their use case. And I think it's a balance between those.
Yeah, and I think it's fair to say your platform, as are most these days, is HIPAA compliant.
Yep.
GDPR compliant?
Yep.
CCPA? I could throw more acronyms at you.
I think so. I probably misspeaking then. So I'll stop there. Yeah. So
that's all stuff that's top of mind for us as well, because we want to do the right thing as marketers. But it's harder when you take your marketer hat off and put your consumer hat on, and you're wondering what's happening to your own information out there. So good question. Other questions for Ryan? Here we go. All right, Stephanie just posted on Slack as well. When tagging keywords in CallRail, how strict is the matching in the terms, or maybe how precise? For example, does it follow more of a regular expression or exact match? And can you segment or maybe change which method you're using to to trigger those matches?
Yeah, so I think the basic is exact match, if I'm not mistaken, but we're like literally in this next week updating automation rules. And I think there's a little bit more flexibility around that. And so I think that the default is exact match, but you're able to loosen those parameters if you want to. And then of course you can have negative words and those types of things too, as a piece of that. But yeah, that's the standard right now, or the default.
Yeah, good question. I like that answer too, because we need more control. I've got a more technical question. Maybe this is a larger topic or an offline conversation, but you said you use Assembly AI. Before we started working with CallRail, we had built our own version of a sentiment analysis engine using Google's cloud and natural language processing, and it sucked. I mean, everybody that's used Siri knows that speech to text is not where it needs to be yet. But have you gone, or do you have any opinion on the strengths, or maybe who the best in class is now between Google and Amazon? You know, Amazon has a competing service. IBM Watson has a competing speech to text transcription and NLP. Do you keep track of those, or are you locked in? And if so, how do you see somebody kind of breaking out from the pack?
That's actually a great question. And I actually had some investors asking the same question as they're evaluating investing in these technologies that are out there. So very timely. So, you know, from the Watsons, the Googles, the Amazons, a piece of it is also costliness, right? You know, just because it's the best, you know, does it, you know, is that extra percent, you know, 1% of accuracy really going to pay off, you know, both for the customer and for the business? You know, what we went through is, you know, our previous provider was not, was not keeping up, right? And we had a lot of problems and a lot of feedback from customers just saying, oh my gosh, these are like absolutely horrible transcripts. Like we can't use this product. And so we went through that evaluation in the beginning, I guess late last year, beginning of this year. And there were just multiple factors on that, right? So it was, of course, accuracy, and we put them all toe to toe, you know, ran a bunch of phone calls through them and looked at the accuracy of the transcripts. And, you know, our one provider now, you know, Assembly is close to the top. You know, if you would say, hey, like go compare them to Google today, do they get beat out by Google? Maybe. But really what was important is they were willing to, you know, work with us and really partner. Like they saw the value we were providing to customers, and they were, you know, they were really, you know, looking to work with a company that can help them in their business too, right? Like how do people actually apply this speech to technology? And so we're helping them out quite a bit with all these use cases of like, oh, aha, that makes sense. Like if CallRail wants that, then everybody wants that, you know, from this perspective. And you know, companies like us are not necessarily their one vertical either. They get into, you know, podcasting and videos. And so they're like trying to do speech to text to provide a better recommendation engine to marketers to say, do you actually want to put this ad in this podcast when they just talked about this very scandalous topic or something like that? Maybe you don't want to do that. And so the technology is interesting. So I don't, you know, I think it's always a tit for tat thing. I hate to like say this is the leader because then someone's going to prove me wrong tomorrow. It's just a function of the industry. But I think that's awesome because we all win because they're constantly pushing each other. And, you know, speech to text has gotten a lot better. You know, just in the 3 years at CallRail, I'm amazed. You know, you know, I think the standout long-term is going to be depending on the kind of like live analysis of voice as it's happening. You know, right now, everything I've seen is super expensive and it's just highly inaccurate compared to what you can do on a transcription. But to me, if someone can really figure that out in the next 5 years, where it's just as good as like, you know, a transcription after the fact, and then everything they've run on it. I mean, if they can do that in real time as, you know, as a person is talking and can compete, I think that's, you know, those are the companies that are going to really break out. And there's good stuff now. It's just expensive, right? Like there's no way marketers would be willing to pay for that now in volume as opposed to more of the speech to text based technology.
Yeah, that makes sense. David, did you have a thought there? I saw you unmuted.
Yeah, I did. And I have a question for Ryan as well. So I looked up the speech to text sort of benchmarks from the summer. And I think Ryan's point is right on. Google and Amazon are the leaders, but you also pay the most for them. I think it's like 2.5 cents per minute, something like that, which does get quite expensive. One of the interesting things too on the real-time transcription is a lot of these models don't just translate word for word. They look at the entire sentence and context for how they do it. And that's why back-end transcription actually works much better. Ryan, one of the things that you brought up, which I see a lot in my engagements, is when to sort of custom write your own models and when to just make a buying decision for something off the shelf. And off the shelf is getting very, very good, but I think it really keys into what your individual value proposition is. So yeah, maybe a couple good examples where you're still using your ML partner to home grow your own algorithms instead of just off the shelf.
Yeah, so I think what we're utilizing is more of that in-house sentiment. So once we do get this data from them and, other data points, how can we build our own models that we know will work for specific industries where it's more out of the box? If you look at, what's available out there and I, have to look to our competition, there's a lot of these, out of the box, click this and it's all set up for your industry. We understand, how the sentiment is working, or you can actually custom kind of custom train your own models, right? And so I think from our perspective, making that leap is pretty difficult, day one. But the things that I want to be able to do, internally in CallRail is to, once we get that data, allow the customers to kind of, have some dials and knobs that they can turn to say, well, here's 100 phone calls. You all said that sentiment was this, but I disagree. I think it was this. Okay, great. Use that data, train a model that's specific to them. And that's like, has that sensitivity level for them, versus, something else. And so that's what I get, excited about, is being able to do that, like get the basic data in, but then start to do some more advanced things that we know, is our business, right? And that's not Assembly's business or any other, provider out there. They want to do the basics, but they're not going to understand, our agency customers or our dealerships or our medical professions. And I think that's where we focus on, once we get that data, what are things that we can do internally with ML and AI to get the best value to them.
Awesome, thanks.
Yeah, I like the idea of tuning it for specific industries, because dentists are going to have a different vocabulary than car dealers.
Yep.